Thanks very much. It is now the hour of 5, so I'll call this meeting to order. I'd like to welcome all the committee members and ratepayers in the audience and staff. I'd like to start with the land acknowledgement statement and acknowledge with respect the history, spirituality, and the culture of the Anishinaabeg people of the Three Fires known as the Ojibwe, Odawa, and Potawatomi Nation who have inhabited this land from time immemorial. And further give thanks to the Chippewas of Saugeen and the Chippewas of Maywash, now known as the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, as the traditional keepers of this land. We also recognize the Métis and Inuit, whose ancestors shared this land and these waters. May we all, as treaty people, live with respect on this land and live in peace and friendship with its diverse peoples. I'd like to offer a little reflection when we refer to us all as treaty people, and we often, with respect to the treaty and how we've changed the way that we consider a treaty. We all live among each other, and we all have a treaty with each other to live peacefully and honor the land that we live on. And I'd like to reflect upon the season. Summer is winding down, and happened to be at Sauble Beach this weekend, and I thought this overall the summer, as you watch it wind down, it was really nice to see that we were all able to live peacefully and without too much problem as we negotiate land ownership at Sauble Beach, and that everyone was able to, for the most part, work together and make sure that everybody lived peacefully and enjoyed the beach in the way that it was. And I look forward to us continuing that relationship, and hopefully we continue to live peacefully with each other and make graceful accommodation for each other and make sure that we live on the land respectfully and happily. So I'd just like to offer that reflection before we start. So I'm going to look for an approval of the agenda, and I'm going to ask for a mover and a seconder that the agenda be approved as presented. Motion made by committee member McMillan, seconded by committee member Ladresse. All those in favor? Motion is carried. I'm going to ask for a declaration of pecuniary interest. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest to declare? Seeing none, if a member of the committee identifies a potential pecuniary interest at any point during the meeting, they can feel free to declare at that time. Looking for a mover for the minutes of the previous meeting, August 15th. Looking for a mover and a seconder. Moved by committee member Glenn, seconded by committee member Coburn. All those in favor? That motion is carried. I'll move to the new business. We have 3 new applications today. Our first application is the DEV 2023-42. Excuse me. Consent for number B-10-23 for Brian Guff. This is a meeting of the Committee of Adjustment to consider the application for severance for Brian Guff, or Gow, I believe. Okay. Under Section 53 of the Planning Act regarding property located at Concession 1, Part Lot 11, West Part Lot 10, Sarawak Township. Mr. Secretary Treasurer, please go ahead with your review. Madam Secretary Treasurer?
If by me, Mr. Chair, our Secretary Treasurer, Mr. Thompson, is no longer employed by the municipality as the Deputy Secretary Treasurer. I'll do that role this evening as well as the clerk.
All right, well, forgive my awkward introduction. I have 2 more. I'll see if I get better in the next day.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There have been no requests for deferral or withdrawal of the application. Notice of this severance, in accordance with Ontario Regulation 197-6, made under the Planning Act, was given on August 21st, 2023 by ordinary mail to all property owners within 60 meters of the property, which is subject to the application, and to all required agencies. Notice was also posted on the subject lands of the township's website. You, as a applicant or a resident, wish to be notified of the decision of the Committee of Adjustment must make a request to the Secretary Treasurer Committee. Only a person or a public body that requests a notice of decision of the committee with respect to this proposed severance may submit an appeal.
Thank you. No members have registered with the clerk to provide comments. Could the planner please give us a summary of the planning report regarding this file?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Summary here. The lands in question are owned by a numbered company. The applicant is Brian Guff, and the purpose of the application is to create an easement over the subject lands in favor of the Guff property for future infrastructure and utilities. The lands are designated as a escarpment natural area, the escarpment plan, as well as the Grey County's official plan, and the therefore the township Georgian Bluff zoning bylaws is not pertaining. The application was circulated for comments as noted earlier, and comments were received by Enbridge Gas. And they noted that they do have service lines running within the area, which may or may not be affected by the proposed severance. And should the proposed severance impact the services, it may be necessary to terminate the gas service or relocate the line according to the property boundaries. Grey County Planning and Development Services also provided comments on September 7th, and they noted that County Transportation Services has reviewed the subject application and have no concerns, and provided positive comments are received from the Conservation Authority. County planning staff have no concerns with the subject application.
That's your job. No, that's your job to remind me. So I'm going to offer the opportunity for the applicant to make comment on the application. Please state your first and last name for the record prior to beginning. I don't see anyone in the crowd here that would want to, the applicant is not in the crowd here. Is somebody on virtually? I will now call upon any members of the public who may wish to make comment on this application. Please state your first and last name for the record prior to beginning. Seeing no one in the crowd and no one reaching out virtually, I'll ask one more time for any member of the public who wishes to make a comment. Seeing no one, I'll turn to the committee members. Is there anyone on the committee who would like to respond to any points raised by the applicant, public can speak? Yeah, committee member Colbert.
Thank you, Chair Thompson. I hope I'm correct in this. I'll through you to our planner. The county is stating that they're recommending comments from the Conservation Authority. And I thought Niagara Escarpment first, and we don't have either. I understand that contact with the NEC is part of the conditions of approval, but I don't see anything in regards to comments from the Conservation Authority. Did I miss that, Michael?
Through Mr. Chair, we did reach out to the Conservation Authority, but no comments received.
So do we take that as, like, what do we typically do in a situation like that? If the county's recommending consultation with them and we don't hear back, do we assume that they don't have an issue?
Through Mr. Chair to over in in instances such as this, we actually have to look back at the purpose of the application. If it were for a creation of a new lot, for example, it would be more important, more imperative to receive comments from the conservation authority. In this case, they're simply adding, I guess, a use to an existing right of way that is already placed for Mr. Goff's lands across to like the Nels line. So in this case, planning perspective, I don't believe the conservation authority would have any concerns. There's nothing else to trigger within that right of way itself for conservation.
You look supplementary question or something.
I think so, I guess. And, when the county's comment is provided positive comments are received from the Conservation Authority, their planning staff have no concerns, but since we haven't heard from them, I don't know how bound we are by that kind of language coming from the county, but it sounds as though our planner is indicating that we are not particularly bound by that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, to Member Coburn. Quite often, the county planning department certainly will provide definitive comments, and they also provide suggested comments. In this case, I would put forward that the comments from the Conservation Authority, although typically would be very good to have. In this case, I don't know if the comments coming out of the Conservation Authority would be enough of a concern that we would add that as a condition. So I would suggest that in this case, we're going with CA comments.
Any further questions from committee members? Seeing none, I will now call for a motion on the decision. It has been demonstrated that application B10-23 for the lands described as Concession 1, Part Lot 11, WPT Lot 10, Sarawak is consistent with the provincial policy statement and the Niagara Escarpment Plan and conforms to the County of Grey's official plan and complies with the Georgian Bluff zoning bylaw. It is recommended that the application be approved subject to the following conditions. 1, that the reference plan be completed and a copy filed with the municipal clerk, or an exemption from the reference plan be received from the Land Registry Office. The reference plan should conform substantially to the sketch Schedule A filed with the application for consent. 2, that pursuant to Section 53, Paragraph 42 of the Planning Act, the certificate of consent be affixed to the deed within 2 years of the giving of the notice of decision. Note, Section 53, Paragraph 43 of the Planning Act requires that the transaction approved by this consent must be carried out within 2 years of the issuance of the certificate, the stamping of the deed. 3, that the owner pays the applicable consent certification fee at the time of certification of the deeds. And 4, that the owner obtain approval from the Niagara Escarpment Commission. Looking for a mover and a seconder. Moved by Committee Member Glenn, seconded by Committee Member McMillan. All those in favor? That motion is approved. I will now call for adjournment of this hearing. Moved by Committee Member Ladresse, seconded by Committee Member McMillan. All those in favor? That motion is carried. I'll move to our second order of business. This is a meeting of the Committee of Adjustment to consider the application for severance for Frank and Linda Ruth under Section 53 of the Planning Act regarding property located Lot 19, Concession 9, Keppel. That's not concession 9. Lot 9, concession 19. You might be impressed that I picked up on that, but it's because I live on that road. So, so do we need to make that? We don't need to make that change there. We will. Oh, it's correct in the motion, so we're okay. Mr. Secretary Treasurer, please go ahead with your review.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There have been no requests for deferral or withdrawal of the application. Notice of this severance in accordance with the Ontario Regulation 197-96 made under the Planning Act was given on October 23rd, 2023 by ordinary mail to all property owners within 60 meters of the property, which is subject to the application, and to all required agencies. Notice was also posted on the subject lands and the township website. Excuse me. If you wish to be notified of the decision of the Committee of Adjustment, you must make a written request to the Secretary Treasurer of the Committee. Only a person or public body that requests a notice of decision of the Committee in respect of this proposed severance may submit an appeal.
Thank you. No members have registered with the clerk to provide comments. Could the planner give us a summary of the planning report regarding this file?
Mr. Chair, again, applications B1423 and B1523 propose to sever 2 non-farm residential lots from an existing 41-hectare parcel. The existing parcel contains a house, a shed, and a barn that is no longer capable of housing livestock. Both severed parcels will front on Gray Road 17 and will be serviced by private wells and septics. All the comments. Notice of the complete application and notice of public hearing was circulated to various agencies for review. Grey County Planning and Development Services provided comments on September 8th, 2023. County Transportation Services has reviewed the subject application and have a comment stating a 5-meter road widening from both the severed and retained lots is required. An exemption for the new residential entrance spacing would also be required, as 150 meters is required spacing between entrances. Provided County Transportation Services requirements are met, and that any endangered or threatened species on the property have been appropriately addressed, county planning staff have no concerns with such application. Hydro One also provided comments, having no comments.
Thank you, Mr. Planner. I will now call upon the applicant who may wish to make comment on this application. Please state your first and last name for the record prior to beginning. Mr. and Mrs. Ruth, do you want to offer anything to the application? You're welcome to make a comment. I don't want to interrupt you, but you also don't have to.
If there's anything I need to add to it, if there's any concerns that anybody has, it's pretty straightforward as far as I know. It's if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Haven't heard any. Yeah. I haven't heard any. We've heard from some of the neighbors that they said had no objections whatsoever, that everything was A-okay with them anyway.
Sounds like it must be a nice community.
Yeah. Very nice.
Thanks very much.
Okay.
Okay, I'll now call upon any members of the public who may wish to make comment on this application. Please state your first and last name for the record prior to beginning. There's nobody left in chambers, so we're going to turn to the virtual screen. Seeing no one, I'll make one last call for any members of the public who wish to make a comment. Okay, I'll now turn to the committee members. Are there any points raised by the planner, applicant, or public that the committee wishes to respond to? Seeing none, I will now call for a motion on the decision. It has been demonstrated that application B1423 and B1523 for Frank and Linda Ruth for lands described as Lot 9, Concession 19, Keppel Township is consistent with the provincial policy statement, conforms to the County of Grey's official plan, and complies with the intent of the township of Georgian Bluffs zoning bylaw 2020-20. It is recommended that the application be approved subject to the conditions noted herein. I'm going to ask for a mover and a seconder. Motion made by committee member Moore-Coburn, seconded by committee member Ladresse. All those in favor? That motion is approved. Thank you. Thanks very much. Oh, I'm going to call for an adjournment of this hearing. Looking for a mover and a seconder. Moved by committee member Glenn, seconded by committee member McMillan. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? This public hearing is now adjourned. Okay, I'm going to move to our third item of business. This is a meeting of the Committee of Adjustment to consider the application for severance for Keith McConnell under Section 53 of the Planning Act regarding property located at Concession 2, WPT Lot 7, WTPT Lot 8. Mr. Secretary Treasurer, please go ahead with your review.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There have been no requests or deferral or withdrawal of the application. Notice of this severance in accordance with Ontario Regulation 197-96 made under the Planning Act was given on July 17th, 2023 by ordinary mail to all property owners within 60 meters of the property, which is subject to the application, and to all the required agencies. Notice was also posted on the subject lands and the township website. If you wish to be notified of the decision of the Committee of Adjustment, you must make a written request to the Secretary Treasurer of the Committee. Only a person or a public body that requests a notice of decision of the committee in respect to this proposed severance may submit.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary Treasurer. No members of the public have registered with the clerk to provide comments. Did the planner please give us a summary of the planning report regarding this file?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the proposed consent application is to sever the subject lands into two rectangular farm-sized lots of approximately 40 hectares each. The retained lands will continue to operate or contain the existing farm operation as well as the applicant's dwelling unit. The retained lands will continue to have frontage on Concession Road 7 and Side Road 6, while the severed lands will continue to have frontage on Side Road 6. Any future access to the severed lands will be from this Side Road 6. The lands are predominantly designated agricultural in the county OP with a small portion designated as hazard. Both township staff and county staff have no concerns with this hazards found on the subject lands. Any future development on either the retained or subject lands would have to consider these hazards. The applicant has also included MDS1 calculations as part of the application. Again, no concerns noted on this point. Comments were received from the Conservation Authority and then overall Grey County Planning staff, both of which, again, have no concerns on the subject or the proposed consent application.
Thank you, Mr. Planner. I will now call upon the applicant who may wish to comment on this application. Please state your first and last name for the record prior to beginning. Seeing no one in chambers. Is the applicant attending virtually? Does not appear so. I will now call upon any members of the public who may wish to make a comment on this application. Please state your first and last name for the record prior to beginning. Seeing no one in the public wishing to comment, I'll now turn to the committee members. Are there any points raised by the planner? Did I hear a representative? I'll jump in again. Are there any points raised by the planner that the committee wishes to respond to? Seeing none. I will now call for a motion on the decision. It has been demonstrated that application B09-23 for McConnell Lands described as part lots 7 and 8, concession 6, Derby as in R242250, except part 1, 16R2577, and part 1, 16R6815, S-T DY7557 Georgian Bluffs is consistent with provincial policy statement, conforms to the County of Grey's official plan, and complies with the Georgian Bluffs zoning bylaw. It is recommended that the application be approved, subject to the following conditions: that a reference plan be completed and a copy filed with the municipal clerk, or an exemption from the reference plan be received from the Land Registry Office. The reference plan should conform substantially to the sketch, Schedule A, filed with the application for consent. 2, that pursuant to section 53, paragraph 42 of the Planning Act, the certificate of consent be affixed to the deed within 2 years of the giving of the notice of decision. Note, section 53, paragraph 43 of the Planning Act requires that the transaction approved by this consent must be carried out within 2 years of the issuance of the certificate, i.e. the stamping of the deed. 3, that the owner pays the applicable consent certification fee at the time of the certification of the deeds. 4, that the owner pays 5% cash in lieu of parkland in accordance with the Planning Act. 5, that the payment of the balance of any outstanding taxes as of the date of the certification of the transfer and deed with respect to the property that is subject to the application shall be made to the treasurer of the Township of Georgian Bluffs, and that the owner provide copies of all existing septic permits and approvals from the local health unit or Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks for the retained portion of the property, that the owner provides confirmation from the local health unit or Ministry of Environment that the severed lot can be appropriately serviced with a septic system, and the owner can provide confirmation from the local health unit or Ministry of the Environment, Conservation and Parks that any existing septic systems associated with the property will not be negatively affected by the proposed severance. Asking for a mover and a seconder. Motion made by committee member Councillor Coburn, seconded by committee member Ladresse. Is there any further discussion? I will call the vote. All those in favor? That motion is approved. I will now call for an adjournment of this hearing. Moved by committee member McMillan, seconded by committee member Ladresse. All those in favor? That motion, or this public meeting, is now adjourned. So that is all the business before us tonight. We have no unfinished business. I will note that the next Committee of Adjustment will meet again on October 17th, 2023 at 5 p.m. And if there's no other business, I will now call for an adjournment of this meeting. Moved by Councillor Coburn, seconded by committee member Glenn. All those in favor? That motion is carried. Thanks very much, folks, and have a good night.